You're welcome back to the AM Club right here on MX24. My name is Zach Kushikala, and yes, we're going to have a great show this morning. If you're just joining in, you made the right choice. Your money deserves the safest home with Telesol Cash. You're protected every step of the way. No risk, no worries, no log stories, just peace of mind. Okay, dial star 110 hash or download the Telesol Play app now for safe, secure transaction. Telesol Cash, your safer choice. Over the weekend, we did celebrate over here at MX Live, MX24 with Ara J, and also gone by last weekend. We had a great time at the Ghana FinTech Awards. So thanks to everyone that showed up to make these events a success. Now, we're about to have a conversation this morning. When my panelist got in, he was like, today's going to be a very calm morning because there's a lot of things we have to talk about, and this time it needs to be talked about with. But this particular individual, I personally think that he's very objective and very constructive in his conversations, so I'm very comfortable. Well, joining me this morning, Deputy Director Campaigns and Advocacy, the NDC Youth Wing, Reginald Achesubuate. Good morning.
Good morning, Mimi.
You are still celebrating Ghana. I mean, Ghana Black Stars.
The Black Stars have a match today, so we are going up against Germany, and
Yeah.
we are hoping that today the boys will do better. These are still the friendly stages. In as much as I think that our team is weak,
Yeah.
it's just right that we still give them the maximum support that they
What
deserve.
that they need.
Whether we like it or not, we are going into the World Cup to win. And so nobody goes into a World Cup to want to leave the group stages. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that it is just right that we support the Black
Support
Stars.
the Black Stars.
But yeah, good morning. How are you doing? You're looking very
well,
beautiful
thank you.
today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Yourself, you're looking very well. I see, Reginald, great conversations coming up. They're very important ones. UN approves Ghana-led resolution declaring slavery a crime against humanity demands reparations. And I'm going to quickly give us a little bit of a little perspective to this conversation before we get into what it is. So President John Dramani Mahama has underscored the significance of proposed United Nations resolution on slavery. He described it as a vital step towards healing and reparative justice for millions of affected people worldwide. Speaking during the deliberation at the UN headquarters, President John Dramani Mahama said the resolution, which seeks to declare the trafficking and enslavement of Africans as one of the gravest crimes against humanity, offers the global community an opportunity to acknowledge the immense suffering endured. According to him, when asked to explain the importance of the resolution declaring the trafficking and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity, he responded without hesitation, stating that the resolution would enable the world to collectively bear witness to the plight of an estimated 80 million men, women, and children whose lives, identities, and futures were taken during the transatlantic slave trade. And according to him, the resolution goes beyond historical recognition, serving as a unifying call for solidarity across Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America, and wider diaspora. And I was telling a panelist earlier that I watched and also listened to some documentaries on how the action was taken. It was graphic, very very heartbreaking. The human beings were treated like that. Maybe later on, I'll find the courage to give us a bit of perspective. But listen, people were treated like animals, and again, a lot of people don't truly understand why this is important at this time. But joining me this morning, Reginald Achesubuate is going to give us how he feels about this, what this means to Africa and the world at large. Reginald, good morning.
All right, Mimi, good morning to you and good morning to all your viewers and listeners nationwide. I think that I want to start off by extending a heartfelt condolences to the families that have lost loved ones over yesterday's unfortunate situation in Newtown. I understand that about 3 people have been confirmed dead, and there are about 20 people that have also sustained various forms of injuries. And so I want to wish them speedy recovery to those that have been injured, and to the families. I saw one of the men and how he was crying. I just cannot help but send out my heartfelt condolences to the families. I think that this calls for urgent need for us to be able to investigate some of these public structure. public structures across. This is even greater Accra, across the country. There are so many buildings that have questionable things. You see the buildings, you see the cement falling off and all of that. But it looks like there are some agencies that are not doing their work. There's an urgent call for them to get back to their work, and also to appreciate Ghanaians. You saw the way people came out in their numbers to support, even before the police, even before all the other agencies that came to partner to work. Ghanaians had shown solidarity, they've shown the level of community, they've shown the level of hospitality, and that is highly commendable. And also, when it gets to the point where some of these mandated agencies are in to do the work, it is just right that we allow them to do the work and to be able to evacuate and then support people. But yes, over over the week, this conversation had taken the front pages. But I think that it is about time we start investing into educating our people. But one of the things is that although we celebrated this, I realized that Ghanaians do not really understand the full glimpse of what this resolution means. And so I saw comments like, oh, it's okay, we need jobs at home and all of that. Not to dismantle that, but I think that in as much as there are several other things that are needed domestically, this thing that has been achieved by His Excellency as one that is worth commending. So it's going to be a little bit of a history class because I think that is one of the things that we need.
That's what's lacking in
And
this
so,
entire conversation.
yeah, and so I don't think the one I will do justice, but we'll try, right? um, Around the 1400s, precisely around 1471, the first Europeans got to the shores of Ghana, and their main mandate was supposed to. They said they were into trade, but after a period, about 10 years, they constructed small spaces to be living, constructed some what they call the castles to be able to store some of the goods that they've traded in. But along the line, there was the discovery of what they call the New World, and that will need people to work on various plantations. So plantations have sprung up, huge ones, sugarcane plantations, cotton plantations, huge. And so around that time, there was also the need to have people work on these plantations. And the history books have it that they were first of using the native Indians, but they were dying from tropical diseases. And one Catholic priest has suggested that they come to Africa because the Africans have proven to be stronger. And so the first, that was what will lead them to want to come to the continent to export, to exploit, to abduct, to traffic through brutal means black people onto the supposed new world to work on plantations. That wouldn't come without resistance. That wouldn't come without hurdles. So there were series of confrontations, series of backlash, and all of that. But all what we are trying to say is that this level of criminality lasted for more than 300 years, close to about 400 years. And this is what will shape a people's culture. When we talk about the culture of a group, it is what has been practiced over a period, their belief system, their values, their norms, their language, and all of that. And so, for a continent like Africa, whose most precious resource, for a continuous of about 6 to 8 generations, will live in perpetual despair, always looking out for the next level of the next raiders that are coming to abduct them, to traffic them into an unknown space to go and work, then it is something serious we are talking about here. But around all of these things, one of the things that I've also heard is that, oh, Africans saw their own people. And I think that you've heard that too. That is one of the stories that is being preached to us to believe. And unfortunately, rather fortunately or unfortunately, how we told us our history was through oral means. Growing up, I remember my grandpa would sit us down when he would come back from work, his grandchildren, and then talk to us. And that is how I know some of the things that happened during Kwame Nkrumah's time. Not because I'd read it vividly, but because I have somebody that has shared his lived experience with me.
Yeah.
And so this was how history was passed down to us. Ours was through oral tradition. But then we grew up and then we are, for the people that enslaved us, they documented it.
They documented what they did.
They documented what they did. And I want to follow on a popular adage that suggests that until the lion tells their part of the story of the hunt will always justify the hunter. because we didn't have our part of the story told. And so it has always been passed down to us that Africans sold their own people. That notwithstanding, this is not me also suggesting that Africans or some Africans did not profiteer from this. Of course, there are several kingdoms that were mentioned that have been documented to have benefited from this trade. But it also does not mean that that equalizes the story. That oh, Africans sold their own people, or there were Africans that were involved in the story. And I'll make a popular. I'll be making reference to some readings for those who are interested. There's a story on Dilemma Tales. There's a point where you have two options, two competing ideas, and both of them are catastrophic. It's either you give up yourself to be enslaved, or you help them to raid. You do not want to do either of them, but this is the only choice you have. Do you help to raid, or you get into slavery? And so there's also another writing by one Senegalese writer called Usman Sembène, and he writes he documents into what they call tribal scars, right? And in tribal scars, he tries to trace the etymology of um, tribal marks,
Tribal marks.
or what they will call body scarification. And in that short piece, I think it's about just 19 to 21 pages. In that short piece, you'll be able to see that even before the arrival of the Europeans, tribal scars was not part of our culture. It was, and in that imaginative story, it documents one man who, at a point, was kept in that dilemma, became a slave raider, and didn't want to do it anymore. And so they wanted him, his wife, and his kid. They wanted to capture them into slavery. The first time they tried, he killed his wife. Because around that time, it was better to die than to be given into slavery. The second time when they were coming, he was with his wife's mom, his daughter. They started running, but they couldn't go far. And the woman said, "You know what? Go. You two should go. I'll be fine. Of course, I'm already old. They don't need me anyways." This man goes into the bush, brings out his machete, starts cutting his daughter. So the old man, in her mind, says that, "Wait, are you going to kill her like the way you killed your wife?" He said, "No. Go into the bush, bring me the leaves that are able to." And these are documented stories that people can always find, but because we do not know, bring me the leaves that are used to stop blood. They attached there on her skin. The raiders came and they said, "Oh, this is old commodity, old goods, damaged commodity. They don't want it." So years in, years out, the raiders will come, but they will not be able to take the girl. The man eventually gave himself up into slavery, but the villagers will come to the old woman. Now, when the raiders are coming, you don't run. Why? What's happening? It is because of A, B, and C. And so the villagers will all now start doing scarification. And it becomes a part of a culture. Of course, in recent history, there's been times where there's been marks for medications. But when we talk of tribal scarification, this is the only documented history of where it might emanate from. You get what I mean? The other thing is that this whole transatlantic slave trade was so dire. And I think that after this resolution, one of the things we have to do is to be able to tell our stories more. Most of the people that were captured were from up north and from northern part of Ghana, neighboring um, countries. Unfortunately, the north of Ghana was deliberately underdeveloped from those times. Deliberately underdeveloped because that was where they were only getting their human cargo. There are various slave markets and slave camps in the north. There's the Salaga slave market, the biggest at the time, of which now, because we do not tell our story as much, that market has been turned into a modern day market. There is the Pecross slave camp, somewhere in Paga. There is the Sakpuli slave camp. And all of these spaces, people will be captured, abducted, kept there. After a number of days, they'll be made to walk miles for somewhere between 70 to 120 days through the bushes of the Mole National Park that today we go and see elephants. Most of the part within the park was made by human foot, and the weaker ones will be given to the wild so that the stronger ones will be able to pass. This is not an equalization theory where you say, "Oh, Africans were complicit in the trade." No, it has become part of a people's culture. This is what was done to our part of the world. For more than this didn't happen for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. For centuries, over 12.5 million people. And when you read Toni Morrison's Beloved, even that number, it might be more. Do you get what I mean? Over 12.5 million people. When you read the history, at a point, the Europeans have what they call the age of enlightenment. What age was that? The age where they could sit, think, and plan how their world should be. We don't have that. Around that time, people were still living in perpetual fear. When they say, oh, when they came, the Africans were living in caves. They were living in caves because they were trying to escape slavery. When you go to the north and you see people's houses made in mud houses, one small entrance, we say, oh, where are people backward like that? No, that was resistance. People built that small entrance where you have to bow and enter, just so that when the raiders are coming, the women and the children will be kept at the back. It gives the men the opportunity to be able to strike the people, the raiders. And it allowed them to come in just one at a time. Whether you like it or not, you have to come in one at a time and you have to bow. You get what I mean? And so, if such a grave history has formed part of a people's culture, to the extent that you go to spaces within central region to Takrady and hear names like Kowankra. Why is a town called Kowankra? It is because it was like these are groups of people that left without saying goodbye. It has become a part of the people's culture. When you visit a typical Ghanaian home today, the first thing they ask you is, "Oh, you had your boko. Should we hide you?" Or it has become a part of the culture. And so, calling for the transatlantic slave trade, what it is, should
What
be.
exactly it was, what it is.
Yes, it was the gravest crime against humanity throughout history. And I mean, I heard that of, I think, the Israeli ambassador. I heard that of um, the US and the UK. Why would they wouldn't vote for it? Because they think that crime shouldn't be shouldn't be measured. Every crime is a crime and whatnot. You see, some of these things you cannot say, when you say something like that, then it means that you do not want to take accountability. Every time they highlight the Holocaust, because perpetrators of the Holocaust have taken accountability, reparations have been paid. But for hours, you do not want to take accountability for it and tell us that, oh, around the time it was legal. What are you telling me? That at what point does legality and morality meet? That, oh, because it was legal, because you made it legal. Who made it legal? Africans were not involved in the
Legalizing
legality
that.
process.
Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
And I hear one woman that is the flag bearer for the Labour Party, I think in the
Kemi.
UK, Kemi, suggesting that, oh, the UK should have voted no because they cannot pay reparations or they cannot take accountability for a crime they helped to stop. What are you talking about? The Osu Christianborg Castle is not too far from here. The Cape Coast Castle is not too far from here. The British operated from all of these spaces. So what are you telling me? For more than 145 years, the Dutch were here. No, 235 years, the Dutch were here. So what are you telling me? They all benefited from the trade. And Kemi is telling me that, oh, because UK abolished it, UK does not. When was the law for even the abolishment passed? The law for the abolishment was passed somewhere around 1807. When did the UK government rectify it? 1833. How many years? Even with that, the abolition didn't come because they felt sorry for the trade. It was because this entire thing is about capitalism. It's about who controls the world. And they have found a new way to do that. And that new way was through industrialization. And it was through another system of mercantilism, where now the bigger colonies will want to now colonize the smaller ones, produce for them. They exploit their raw materials, produce, and then sell back to them.
Sell back to them.
Do you get what I mean? And
That's another form of colonization.
yes. So they had formed, they moved from slavery, one form of imperialism, to colonization. And it was not because they felt like, oh, it was too bad, they want to stop it. No. It was because of black people and the black movements that were led by people like William Wilberforce. The abolitionist movement. It was some grave, deadliest movements. The likes of Venture Smith, the likes of Olaudah Equiano. You see, one of the things they have successfully done, which is affecting us in contemporary times, is what we call diaspora wars or diasporic wars. I don't know if you're familiar with it. On Twitter, the Africans in the diaspora are made to believe that blacks on the continent sold their people. And so, like, they are very mad at it. And the blacks on the continent also do not know the history, and so think that the blacks in the diaspora are better off than them. And so, oh, you cry, why are you talking too much? Me, I even wish my grandpa was sent into slavery. I would have been in the Americas. That is what,
I
like,
guess that's the position of Kemi.
that is what the blacks on the continent those are some of the words they use. Meanwhile, the blacks in the diaspora have also been made to believe that Africans are their own people. When you go to the castles and you see the position of the cannons, you realize that some of the cannons were inland, were facing inland. Most of the attacks were coming from the sea. Why are some of the cannons facing inland? Because people revolted. People revolted. People fought against it throughout history. And if the Akwemus will comment on this video, the Akwemus fought the British in the Osu Castle. They took over the keys of the Osu Castle. They are the only early ethnic group that I have come across that fought the British, that won against them in the Osu Castle. People revolted. People fought against it. And so it is never true that, oh, it is not our history. It is our history too. Maybe Reginald is poor today because my great grandfather left our big mansion, was running, and now see me. You get what I mean? It is part of our history. When you read a story by this Nigerian writer, he was also given into slavery. His name is Olaudah Ekwenu. And he writes on Ekwenu's travel. He talks about how he and his sister were left in the house. His mother had traveled to go to the farm. You know how African mothers are. African mothers are such that they will suck out the phlegms from their children's nose. Yes. That's how much loving they are. Yes. And this African mother had gone to the farm. The raiders come and raid and capture his kids. She comes back. Nobody wrote her side of the story. We don't know the side of Olaudah Ekwenu's mother's story. We don't know what happened to her. Perhaps she has not been able to talk since. Perhaps she what happened to her? We don't know. But we only know that of Olaudah Ekwenu because he documented his own. We don't even know the part of her sister's story. What happened to her? And so it is as much as our collective history. And I think that until we know our history and our place in history, this whole thing of diasporic wars will be a thing of the past. And it is intentional. I look at our history books and I know we are not teaching this history as much. That is why there's so much ignorance that is being spewed. That, oh, Africans saw their own people. What are you telling me?
I think whilst we stay on the conversation, what does it mean for the countries that, again, UK has shown why they left, they didn't, include their...
They didn't vote.
They didn't vote.
Right.
But for the other countries that didn't vote and who are not speaking as well, do you think it's just them trying to play safe, considering, who is purported to be ruling the world or who seems to be running the show when it comes to diplomacy? Or we can decide to let it go and focus on what's more important?
No, Mimi, there are so many people, like several other Ghanaians or even people of the world that thinks that, oh, slavery happened a long time ago.
Why are you worried?
America abolished slavery in 1867, 65, 67. And so if slavery was abolished in 1865, why are we still talking about slavery today? Can't you develop your country? We are not looking for reparations to develop the country. We are looking for, we are talking about this for the purposes of accountability, so that you do not hold us to it. You see, Kwame Nkrumah said something profound, and I'll come back to what he said. He said that our development, we are not going to let any Westerner define what our development should look like to us. For us, our development will be defined by us, by the number of kids in our schools, by how our people are able to access health, and our shared prosperity. You get what I mean? But when you look at the profiles of the countries that decided to abstain, show me one of them that is not an European country. And these are the people that benefited from the trade. But if their conscience would have served them right, those have been the best time for them to even show some level of remorsefulness. Because whether they like it or not, their nations were built on the backs of slavery. On the backs of innocent people that had been abducted. And the fact that we are in a more complex world now, a more globalized world now, does not mean that some of these things we cannot talk about it. But the least they could have done was to take accountability. I hear America saying that, it wasn't passed in a way they wanted some things to have been changed about it and whatnot. I think that they could have still supported it, and those changes could have been made. It is not in good faith that they decided to vote against it. They do not want to take accountability, and that is it. And when you come to the continent too, because of how people think, oh, this thing has been in the past, but we are living with its realities today. We are living with its consequences today. And so, in as much as it is something that has happened several years ago, it does not mean that we shouldn't, we should decide to not want to take accountability for it, or we decide not want to know the role that period played in our contemporary lives. Today, we talk about how Africa is heavily indebted. Today, we talk about how African leaders are corrupt. What there's a structure that perpetuates all of these things, and that structure is what the global order did it. It kept some nations higher and then some nations lower. And when you read why nations fail, you'll be able to know that some countries are deliberately or intentionally pushed into that bracket so that they will always want to look up to other states. And so I think that all of these things are embedded in structure. So when African leaders are corrupt, Dambisa Moyo says it in her dead aid that it is these same superpowers and this whole thing of, oh, give them aid, that is what is perpetuating the problem of corruption. In somewhere around the 1960s, when African leaders decided to come together to find a homegrown problem, a homegrown solution to their homegrown problems, in Lagos, they called it the Lagos Plan. It was this same Westerners, what's his name, the Beige, who came up with a Beige report and will now decide how
How the
Africans should be ruled, Africa should be ruled, and some of our problems. So all of these things is embedded in structure,
Structure.
and they are following that structure. And until some of these things come up, we are able to hold them to accountability, and then also start finding solutions to our problems. That's the way forward. I spoke about the age of enlightenment. What I'm just trying to say is that there was a time where the Americas, the European states, were able to set and design what their world should look like. We do not have that time because they're able to sit and do that because they had people working on their plantations for them, building their countries for them. We
they
cannot
have
do
time
that.
on their
And
hands.
all of these things happen for like 400 years. People were doing this, building your nation for you. We do not have that. We need to be thinking and building our nation at the same time. So on a bedrock of about development that has lingered on for so many years, it will mean that we need to work 10 times harder. It will mean that we need to think 10 times deeper. It will mean that we need to get ourselves more dirtier.
Yeah.
But whether they like it or not, Africa's time is coming.
Yes, in wrapping up on this conversation, this was supposed to be the last one, but then you raise a conversation that I think is very important now. As we push forward, it's been accepted, it's been adopted, we're moving forward, making progress with regards to this issue. Now, for Africans like Ghana, right?
Yeah.
How do we ensure that any reparation received are transparently managed and actually benefit citizens rather than get lost in governance inefficiencies? And that is at the back of what you just said with
Yeah, one
in
of the
terms of
profound
reparation.
things that I like from our foreign minister, and I beg to differ, this has been one of the best foreign ministers we've had throughout history, ever since my eyes saw the light of day, and ever since I started reading history. I think that our foreign minister has been up to task. I don't know who his advisors are, but they are doing a phenomenal job. One of the things that he made mention of, and this has been some, you see, anytime something good, anytime you are fighting for something, these are some of the backlash that you receive. Oh no, who are the reparations even supposed to go to? Why are you asking for reparations? Is it for the black Americans or is for the continent? Is it for the leaders? What is it going to look like? And he has said, and he said categorically, that they are not looking forward to profiteer from this. And it will even be a grave taint on their conscience that this is the motive.
Yeah.
The motive is not to profiteer from reparations or to profiteer from this resolution. The motive is for correction for structural inequality that has existed over years.
too.
Today, in modern day history, there is still racism. In modern day history, there's still huge inequality. And so, what reparatory justice is just trying to, some of the suggestions that I've read and they've put forward is that there needs to be trust funds, educational support, like intentional ones. This is not you passing it down because you feel like it is a gesture. This is something that you are mandated to do because you have stolen from a continent. You have looted some of its artifacts and you do not give it back to the Asante Kingdom in a term of a loan for 3 years. No. That is not reparatory justice. You know, as part of the things that they did, they looted some artifacts from the continent,
Yes.
from the Congo, from Angola, from Ghana.
Anna, yeah.
They should return those artifacts. That is you taking accountability. That is you saying that, oh, you gave up. You know the role you played and you are sorry for it. Bring back those looted artifacts. Don't say that you are giving it back to the Ashanti Kingdom for 3 years. You remember
Yeah,
about,
I
yeah,
remember that
and it's still in
agreement.
the
Yeah,
Minsha Palace.
yeah.
I am just waiting for the 3-year term to reach so that we see what we do.
What
That
we
their
do
laws do not allow them to return
to
it.
return.
Well, who formed those laws? You know?
So the justification for this was supposed to be that once there's war and you know, one is defeated, then you become their property, and everything they take away from you is for them. Right? Was saying on that conversation of
Yeah.
His Excellency John Dramani Mahama
Right.
being out there and doing the Lord's work.
Right.
He spoke on the issue of LGBTQ,
Right.
and he urges international partners to respect Ghana's position on LGBTQ issues. And whilst we're talking about this, we do remember that for a very long time, some international bodies have tried to either encourage or push Ghana to accept that conversation as, you know, as a part of us. And some members of your party in the past have pushed strongly against. People are asking where are they, but having said that, please briefly speak on this issue for me,
See,
on
the,
respecting Ghana's stance on
this
LGBTQ.
this comes off on the bedrock of Lincoln University
Yes,
deciding not to honor him any longer.
anymore. Yeah.
And I saw this Lincoln University honorary degree about a month ago. I saw the newsletter that suggested that he'll be going to Philly and then to Temple University and then to Lincoln. Lincoln University holds a very big part of our history because our nation's founder is Osaje for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah attended Lincoln, and it was in that Lincoln University that he joined black movements and led series of protests.
Right.
It was from there that Akwaje discovered this young man and said, let's put him in to become a general secretary for the United Gold Coast Convention. And so Lincoln University did play that role. But for them to come out last minute to say they want to rip him off this honorary degree that was supposed to be awarded to him because of what was happening in his country.
In his country, yeah.
I think that it is on them, you know, because His Excellency swore an oath to the Constitution, and that Constitution also mandates that issues that are bills that are being discussed in Parliament are being discussed in Parliament. He do not have the right to interfere in bills that are being discussed in Parliament. The other thing too is that it's under this same bedrock that Ghanaians are suggesting or Ghanaians are saying that LGBTQ is alien to us, because it looks like there's an intentionality to push it down. There was a research that suggests that 92% of Ghanaians are homophobic, but it also means that there are some 8%, right? And for the longest time, our laws have been very silent on LGBTQ rights, up until there was a training that was supposed to train advocates somewhere, around 21 people that got arrested, and there was some whatever in some school in North Legon and all of that. I think that what His Excellency suggests was that the culture of a country is in the hands of its people, and so its people would dictate what it should look like.
As it should be.
If today, why are we even referring to it as LGBTQ? Because we feel like it is not ours. Like, there are Ghanaians that are lesbians, that are gays. They have a name for it. If Ghanaians want to be the ones to advocate for it, let Ghanaians be the advocates for it. And don't let it be like, oh, there are people that are speaking in a particular language with some accent. Then we'll think that it is alien to us. Before that, we used to call it supi supi. We used to call it TRMU, TRUMU. That is how we used to call it. You know, so let people champion this and talk about this in dialects that we understand. And don't let it look like an imposition. Once it feels like an imposition, it will be treated like an imposition. You get what I mean? And so our laws, our bills will be guided by the interests of the people. And so the people will be allowed to make decisions that affects them. If today Ghanaians feel like, oh, they are woke, and there's more explanations to it, and they think that Supi lives matter, and so they want to champion a Supi lives matter, it should carry Supi lives matter in Ghana, not LGBTQ plus, right? You get what I mean? Yes, I get it. There's a global identification to be able to sum all of that, but our problems are peculiar to us, and we need to fight it our way. And we will respect it that way.
Yes.
You get what I mean?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you so much. Reginald, you have done justice to both these
Are
conversations.
we done?
Now, finally, before we go on the 9 months issue,
Right.
so we will ruthlessly come for after you, 9 months to illegal miners. And last week they were in the news. They had a press conference highlighting some of the issues and how they intend going about it. I saw the anger and the hunger to completely eradicate this issue out of our society completely. They seem to be doing a great work. But they have had some pushbacks, and so this is the warning they're sending out there. Your thoughts on this one, finally?
Before the 2024 election, Galamsey was one of the top five problems in the country, if not number one. It is one of the top five. And one of the promises of the NDC was to fight Galamsey ruthlessly through various means. I remember His Excellency saying that we are going to use AI and all of that. One of the angles to fighting Galamsey is the National Anti-Illegal
NIMOS,
Mining Operations Secretariat, NIMOS. Um, since last year when they started their operations, we have seen them achieve some very decent achievements. Where they said some 9 forest reserves that were previously declassified as now being restored. They are reclaiming the land and all of that. But in as they empower their men to do more work, the Galamseyers are also empowering themselves to do more. So I see some videos of some Galamseyers with raffles suggesting that if you trespass, they will
Yeah.
also fight back and all
Yeah.
of that. That is not a point that I want us to get at all. But what NIMOS is saying is that if it gets there,
Yes.
they are going to use extraordinary measures to be able to get people out of this illegal mining menace. Because when you look at elsewhere, the turbidity level in the water bodies have reduced. Other sides to it has increased. What it means is that then they need to
Level the fight.
level the fight, and that's one of the things that they said they are going to be establishing district officers now. That's going to be ensuring that they are
Which you
NIMOS.
suggested a very long
Yes,
time
a
ago.
very long time
A
ago.
very long
That
time
they will
ago.
have NIMOS operations at various hotspots so that they don't just come and go. If you come
Yes.
and go, the people will go back.
Sure.
And to let your men stay there. And that is why there was an increase in their budgetary allocation for
Yes.
2026. And I also think that is why there has been an increase in the number of people that are being recruited into security services. Because NIMOS is a coordinated effort from various security agencies there.
Yes.
National security, immigration, military, police. So it's a coordinated effort. And so when we increase the number of people that we take into a security agency, we'll be able to roll more of these people in the fight. And I think that at the end of the day, we should be looking at chalking some very good successes. I think that their quarterly briefing is also very, very good.
Very
It
good,
gets us
yes,
informed.
yes.
Lately, we don't hear about it being talked as much, but we are also trusting that they are in the bushes, they are getting the work done. And we are also calling on all well-meaning Ghanaians. To the big man that is sitting in an office watching me today but has secured a consignment yesterday, I just want you to have the nation at heart. Like, what shall it benefit a man if he has all the money and does not have water to drink? What shall it benefit a man if you have all the money and you die tomorrow? And so, in as much as you are thinking of your self-interest, you are thinking of how you can maximize your wealth. Think about the nation too. Do it sustainably, and let's raise the flag of Ghana high.
And this is what I said earlier. Once you're having a conversation with Reginald, you know that you're going to get a very constructive look at every conversation. So we have been having conversation. We were supposed to be joined by another person, but unfortunately, technically, we're not able to connect. But Reginald Ashenso Boateng, Deputy Director, Campaigns and Advocacy, the NDC Youth Wing. Sometimes people ask me, do you really belong to the NDC? Because when Reginald is speaking, he speaks like a Ghanaian and a young Ghanaian at that. And so thank you very much. His position, wait.
No, I was going to say that we wish the Black Stars well today.
The Black
Today they
Stars.
should bring some smiles on our face.
Yeah.
On our faces. And well, thank you.
We need that.
We need that.
We need that. We really need that. With all that's happening in the country, just before we went on air, I saw something online that a church that I think something Resurrection New Generation Church is on fire now. Lots of things happening. And earlier this morning, I talked to you about ECG and what is happening with our electricity. They're saying that, listen, the storms we've experienced over the past couple of days has affected some of their machines, and so they're working on it. So Doomsaw is not back, for those who are asking. But today we spoke about UN approving Ghana-led resolution declaring slavery a crime against humanity. We did touch on the president urging international bodies to respect our position when it comes to LGBTQ. And of course, we touched on NIMOS as well. Lots of conversation up on our website as well, mx24online.com. Connect with us as we learn and grow together. We here, we don't do too much politics. We talk about Ghana. We do a lot of developmental conversations, okay? So our politicking is different. So join us as we keep learning and growing together. Up next is Event Guide right here on the AM Club. We'll be right back after this. Reginald, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.